I cannot remember that I ever met a person who didn't want one thing: financial independence. Financial independence is the great feeling to have accumulated enough capital that creates sufficient cash flows that pay the bills on a daily basis. It must not necessarily be becoming a billionaire or a multi-millionaire. Financial independence for most people is quite simple. Enough money to pay the monthly rent, to buy grocery, to go on a holiday, to pay the education for the kids, and to pursue their own dreams. Financial independence is not coming from a certain type of born talent or just luck and coincidence. Financial independence is created with a skill that is teachable and learnable. And the skill is called financial literacy. Financial independence is simply learning a few very simple and basic rules and following them daily by creating the necessary habits that create financial independence as an end result. The great thing today is, thanks to billionaires and millionaires, that the necessary content to learn the skill financial literacy is mostly available for free on the internet. Just Google it, find the right speakers, and listen to the content. It was not always that simple. Before the internet, finding the right content was a complex and difficult thing, which needed a lot of traveling. That on top of that cost a lot of money, which makes it harder to become financial independent. Today, you go online and you find everything you need. The only thing you still have to do is putting things into practice. Two of those billionaires and multimillionaires who love putting content out there for free to help people are the billionaire Grant Cardone and the multimillionaire from Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary. The following is a conversation between Grant Cardone and Kevin O'Leary in which they debate and have a conversation about the habits people need to create to become financially independent. Enjoy the conversation.
Multiply. Let's get Mr. Kevin O'Leary here. This guy is a super stud. You've seen him on CNBC. You see him on ABC. You see him on, God dang, where is he not? He's everywhere. One of the best.
They just finished shooting.
They finished the shooting. Jared's telling me he is definitely the best looking shark of all the sharks. He is the smartest shark of all the sharks. He is the best investor of all the sharks. And he is my friend, Kevin O'Leary. Good to see you here, my friend.
Great to be here, Grant. Really great.
So, Kevin, thanks for taking your time. I appreciate it. Always good. I always enjoy chopping it up with you. What do you say, Kevin, is the difference between the earner and the investor?
There's a few rules that I've observed over 30 years of investing where people make big mistakes and also are very successful because they avoid them. The earner learns how to take a portion of what they earn and invest it. And I'll tell you a story that I like to tell that I learned from my mother. Now, way back, she was not, a analyst or portfolio manager or anything like that. She used to take 20% of her income when she worked in a clothing factory, and she bought telco bonds, and she bought S&P 500 stocks that paid dividends. And she had that portfolio for 52 years. Wow. Back in those days, the bonds earned 6 to 7%. She liked telco bonds because she thought people turned their heat off rather than not be able to talk to each other. Back in those days, in the late 50s and 60s, with telephones. You had to pay your bill. And telco bonds were safe as banks, and that's what happened. So over that 52 years, she kept that a secret account from both of her husbands. She'd been married twice. And I learned about all this after she passed away. I'm the older brother, and my younger brother, Shane. I got a call from the executor of the estate, and was passing that to me, a lawyer, and said, "You got to come down here. Your mother died a very wealthy woman." I said, "No way. We're a middle-class family." He said, way, get down here and see this portfolio. 52 years of compound dividends and interest. She only ever took out what the interest or the dividend was. She never touched the principal. She died, and I always wondered, where'd she have all this cash to put me through college and help extended family members? It wasn't that she was frugal, it was just she took that 20% earnings and she didn't buy crap, she invested it. And that was the difference. And so many people today don't have that basic instinct to take some portion of what they earn and invest it, because the market gives you 7 to 8% year in, year out. Some years are different, but it consistently does that your entire life.
So Kevin,
you gotta put some
You got to
away.
tell me what it was worth. You can't keep me hanging like this, man.
No, she died. I won't say that because I've told the story so many times, but it was one poop load of money. And you know what I did with it? Because I was very fortunate at that time. I'd already had some great liquidity, so I distributed it to, some of my family members that had not learned the rule of saving and investing.
So Kevin, would you rather be, just for this conversation, you and I didn't plan any of this, we're just talking here. So would you rather be a big earner or a small investor?
Small investor all day long. I have this thing called Know Your Nut, Grant. Listen to this. And I do this with really wealthy people too. Know your nut. You don't need a computer. You don't need a phone. You don't need anything. You need a piece of paper and a pencil. Listen to this. I ask them, just show me all of your income over a 90-day period, and on another sheet of paper, what you spend in that 90-day period. I don't want computers. I just want you to think about how you make it. And even really wealthy people spend beyond their means. It's incredible. The boats, the cars, the girls, the restaurants, all the stuff that they're burning cash on that they're not putting back into the market. And the whole idea is that you got to start thinking about what happens when you turn 60 and 65. You got to start putting money away and build that nut, that nest egg. If you don't know your nut, you're going to go bankrupt. That's what's going to happen, or you're going to end up with nothing when you're old because you're burning more cash than you got.
Yeah, and Kevin, would you rather earned income or passive income?
Passive income.
See, because I hear some people say, I heard one guy say, a big social media guy, no such thing as passive income. I'm like, I got $1 million of that last month. If it's not real, I don't know how it got to my account because I didn't trade time for it.
Well, I think the philosophical way to look at this is when you have money working for you all night long, you're sleeping, and it's out there doing its thing, either giving you interest or a dividend, or it's in a capital that is growing because you're invested in a business. That was money. You had two choices. You could have spent it on something like, cars or something, and just pissed it away. Or you put it to work in the market, which is making you 7 to 8% in perpetuity, and sometimes more. And so it's really about having the discipline to put money aside. I'm very fortunate now. I've invested in a lot of good businesses, and most of my wealth is because I invested in things that became more valuable in sometimes very short periods of time. And I don't need to work. I do it because I like to. But I don't waste money. I know my nut. I know exactly what I burn. And I never burn more than I'm bringing home. Never.
And then, so when you buy the red watch, or what are you wearing today?
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. This is a steel blackface Daytona with a red band. I just got back from shooting Shark Tank. It's one of my favorite Shark Tank watches.
Okay.
By the way, this watch is up, Grant, just so you know, since I bought it, 114%. I know that.
Yeah, but it's not up because you're not going to sell it. So what does it matter?
No, I know, but I mean, my portfolio of watches is an asset class to me. It's like buying art, and I mark to mark my portfolio of watches. I'm anal about it every night. I look at what my watch collection's worth. Now, my wife thinks I'm nuts when I bring home another watch and I show her my portfolio. It's not going to be for me. My son thinks he's going to get these, but I've told everybody and in my family, I'm burying all these watches in my casket with me because I'm going to need them where I'm going.
Where time does not exist. So now, if you're 25 years old, let's take Kevin O'Leary, 25. You're not on Shark Tank. Nobody knows you. You don't have a name. Would you have your attention today? You wouldn't be buying Rolexes, right?
No, no. This is a luxury that I can afford today, and it's a disease. A watch collecting is a disease. I'm afflicted with this disease.
1,000%. What kind of principles would you have? First of all, do you believe it's real if you were 25 and broke, whether you live in Canada or America, that you could become a millionaire in America today?
Yeah, I did that. That's exactly what I did. I didn't become a millionaire in Canada. I moved to Boston years ago, and I worked real hard. But, I had that discipline back then. I didn't want to be an employee. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to work for people. Never could. Always got fired. I just can't do it. And so I started my own business, and I worked like hell. And we sold it for $4.2 billion. That was years ago in Boston. And that was my first, crack at the whip, if you want to call it that. And then I retired for 3 years, went around the world, lived everywhere, and I got back to work. And, I've been very fortunate since then. I've had many winners and many losers. But the point is, you got to believe in yourself, and you got to focus on investing. You got to put capital to work and let it grow.
Yeah. But look,
you're not making any money putting it in the bank.
Yeah. In the beginning, though, like how important is it for the individual to make a commitment, in not just to a job, doing a good job, getting better at their job, but like, okay, I'm going to create wealth for myself. Is that an important step to make?
It's the most important step. And the way you do that is you have the discipline to put aside between 10 and 20% of what, I don't care if you make 50 grand. If you make 52,500 is the average income in America. You take 10% of that each month and you invest it in the market, the stock market, an index, I don't care what you buy. And by the time you're 65 years old, you will have about $1.5 million in the bank, and that's your nest egg. That's if you do nothing else except save 10%. You have to have the discipline of doing that, but I tell everybody that all the time. Now, you may do much better, but if you just let the market do its thing, and you have the discipline not to spend that money, everybody can save 10% of what they're making. Everybody can. Everybody. They just don't have the discipline to do it. And if you don't do that, I don't care if you're 40 years old, you got to start doing that. The market's a wonderful thing, Grant. It's a wonderful thing. I live with it every day. I put money to work.
What do you like better, the real estate that I invest in or the stock market that you talk about every day?
I do both. I have a pretty big real estate.
How big? How big is it?
Well, it's 31% of the portfolio. Right now, it's a little less because I've invested in a bunch of other stuff too, but it's always the core. I own a lot of real estate. Now, real estate is a wonderful thing. But, it can cost you money if it's just land. It can cost you money if it's residential and you're not renting it out. But it's an asset class that has never let America down, ever. So you want to own some land, you want to own some buildings, you want to own some apartments. You can do all that, and you do that well. But that's a 30%. That's a third. That's a good nut. I do a lot of other things too. But real estate,
You're a sophisticated guy. I'm just a simple man.
No, but listen, I love real estate.
You're the one that knows. You know how you know when somebody's sophisticated? When they know how to read the French wines. We were having dinner over at Surf Club, and I said, Kevin, I can't read this wine list. Can you? And he's like, ew, how do you say it? How do you do all your French and stuff?
No, le Chevalier de Testevin. That's what I am. Yeah. And I know wines. I sell wines. I've got a pretty big wine business. I've got 3,000 acres in California and Sonoma and Walla Walla Valley that I own or lease. I make wine. I mean, that's my whole thing. But, I'll tell you something, Grant. The whole idea is putting aside money for yourself. That's the key. That's the key. It's so important. It's like everything.
Yeah, if you go back to the 1920s when the big collapse, what was that called? The Great Depression. Mm-hmm. If you look at what the wealthy were doing at that time, as much as 40% of their income was going to investing and saving. Are you already drinking today? Dang, man.
No, that's a little tea.
You got the life. So that I saw that. I went and studied wealthy people back for the last 80 years. And I'm like, these people are packing away 20%, in bad times, 40%. But they weren't just saving in the bank. They were doing what your mom was doing, buying things that paid a dividend. How do people invest today when all these dividend stocks are gone? AT&T pays nothing. General Motors pays nothing. The banks pay 0.0012%. What would you be invested in for those that want income on a monthly basis?
So I use the ETF market, exchange traded funds. Actually, I don't buy individual stocks. I find ETFs, there's many of them out there. Right now, the S&P 500 is paying about 1.8% dividend yield, but it's also appreciating in value 7 to 8% a year. Sometimes the last couple of years, much better than that. So, you know, there's so many of them. They're inexpensive, and you can download an app on your phone to do it. There's so many of those. Here's the difference. Right now, a bank account, a savings account, is yielding 21 basis points. That's 0.21%. Inflation is 2.2%. You're making nothing. You're losing 2% a year in a bank. Now, people think, oh, that's safe. I can put my money in a bank. But I don't think it's that safe, because it's losing 2% a year in value. Either you buy real estate or you buy stocks. You have to buy assets. You got to decide what you're going to do. I prefer assets, because I learned from my mother, that produce some kind of interest or dividend. I live off the yield and the dividends. I never touch the investment. I don't sell it. I've owned these things for decades. And then each month, I know my nut. I know exactly what I'm going to bring in, and I have the discipline not to spend more than I'm bringing in every month. It's a very simple philosophy on life. The more you make, the more of a lavish lifestyle you can have, but you never touch the principal. And if you can, pay down your debts, because you got to be debt-free by the time you're 60 years old.
So you're saying you live off the dividend or the passive income, not the earned income. Am I right? You don't.
It's the passive income. I take that earned income after tax and I invest it.
Right. So
I invest it, and that's how I grow my nut. That's how I grow my nut.
Yeah. So your earned income is the money you invest, and the passive income is the money you can buy the Rolex with.
Exactly. And I know my nut. Every month I mark to market what I own. I see the cash coming in on the past investments. So all of this stuff, we got a bunch of houses. I love real estate. I got to pay for all those too and maintain them. But I know my nut. I never spend more than I'm bringing in. I learned that from my mother when I was 18 years old. And I've never, ever, 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 ever gone over what I make bringing in. That's a really bad outcome. Really bad.
Last thing before we go to our VIPs and we do a little Q&A and let those guys ask you questions. What advice would you have the person out there that's out there that's like, man, I could never be a millionaire. I'll never be wealthy. I'll never get rich. Those times are over. The opportunities are over. They're gone. What advice would you give that person? That's simply not true.
That's simply not true. It's just not true that you don't die a millionaire. You have to have every person listening right now can be a millionaire. I say $1.5 million if they just took 10% of what they make on an average salary and put it away. You start when you're 22 years old. It's the hardest part, and I teach my kids this too, the hardest part is don't buy crap. You don't need 15 pairs of jeans. You don't need 40 sneakers. You don't need a lot of crap you bought. That should be in the market making money for you. That's the whole idea. And that's the hardest part. But everybody can die a millionaire if they learn to put aside 10% in the market. Not a savings account. That's not going to do it for you. 21 basis point ain't going to work. Now, either you buy real estate or you buy stocks and bonds. They've both been good investments for 200 years.
And how much, last thing, is how much do you think is enough? Like, what should people's real target be to be truly wealthy, financially free? Do you think there's a number that gets you there?
It's your lifestyle decision. You can live off $1.5 million if you're frugal. You can do it. There's a way absolutely you can do that. If you want to have a more lavish lifestyle, you work harder, you save more in your early years. Most people live within their means. It depends how lavish you want to be. I love the nut. The number I like that I strove for so long when I was young, I told my dad this and my mother, if only I could figure out a way to put $5 million aside. Mm-hmm. And I worked like hell to get that first 5. The rest was real easy after that. I mean, because once you have money, you can make money. That's the whole point.
Yeah. How critical do you think having that target locked in on? Like, even though it was a fantasy to you, you didn't know how to get there. You didn't know the mechanics, but you locked in on that $5 million. How important was that?
You got to have that locked in number, because you know what happens is You're thinking about buying something and you got your nut, you got your number, and you say to yourself, do I really need this piece of crap? And the answer is no. I'm going to put it towards my target. I mean, you're teaching the right disciplines here. I don't care if your target's $1 million. I don't care if it's 500,000. You gotta hit your target. And the way you do it is you have the discipline not to spend money on crap you don't need.
Yeah. So lock in on the target so the belt doesn't look as the belt, the trip, the car.
You don't need that stuff. Once you hit your target, you set a new one. You say, I want more. I mean, look, that's the American way.